This is a B7 ecology triple science video looking at sustainable fisheries. The first thing I'd like to show you is this, because I think it's a really good example of how data can be manipulated. So the question says, which is the most sustainable fish to eat in 2015 and why? Now 2015 doesn't appear on any of the graphs, so we've got to consider the information to predict what the levels of particular fish might be 5 years later than the data gives us. And if we have a look, we've got this dashed line, which is the precautionary limit, so kind of the limit that we shouldn't drop, and if the numbers do drop below that limit, then we're in danger of losing that species. So we can see already that cod is immediately out of the picture, because somewhere around 1984 it got below the precautionary limit. So numbers haven't actually risen above that. They've kind of fluctuated around, but still not come above that precautionary limit. So that is definitely not a sustainable fish to eat. Herring has gone up and down and is starting to just creep back over that limit. But if we look at these two graphs on the left, we can see that actually 150,000 tonnes is the precautionary limit for cod, but the precautionary limit for herring is more like 1,300,000 tonnes. So it's actually really quite different, because the scales on the side of each graph are totally different. Okay, now haddock is looking quite promising, because it doesn't really ever go dramatically below the precautionary limit. But the point I'm really trying to make here is that you need to look at the scale on the side of the graph to get a real clear indication of what numbers are doing, because the numbers on the cod graph here may look like they're fluctuating around quite a lot, but the scale is much shorter. So if you put that same information on the herring graph, it wouldn't be showing such fluctuations. That's the point I'm trying to look at here. Okay, it's about how we analyse that data, and is the data being presented in a fair way to make a fair comparison. And really this data isn't doing that. They've chosen different scales to kind of make us really analyse it carefully. So if you've ever watched Deadliest Catch, which is a programme on television about fishing and sustainable fishing, you'll have a good idea about how to approach ideas of making fishing sustainable. The key methods to ensure that fish stocks don't drop below that precautionary level is that we have what we call fishing seasons. Okay, so we see on Deadliest Catch that they have a season that usually only lasts a very short period of time. Sometimes they're looking at maybe only a 48-hour window, which is the fishing season. They'll also be told where they can fish, so there'll be banned areas where they're not allowed to go to. There'll be areas that they think there's going to be lots of fish, and they'll all go to different areas so they're not competing with each other too much. And there'll be quotas, so once the boat is full and they've taken as much fish on board as they can, their quota is done, and that's the end of the season for them. So it actually restricts how much fish can be taken out of the water, and they'll need a license. It can't just be any old boat goes out and fishes in that time. They'll need to have a license to allow them to go out and fish. Quite often now, particularly with tuna, we see that it's line caught tuna, and they're not using nets as much, because lots of other animals and turtles and things can get caught in the nets. So it's more sustainable to use line fishing. And there'll be rules on the size of the fish that they're allowed to take. So if there are small fish, the juveniles, they're thrown back into the water to enable them to reproduce and keep the numbers flourishing. Okay, so lots of things to consider there in terms of sustainable fishing. To be honest, if you watch one episode of Deadliest Catch, they cover all of these things in every single episode, so that could be time well spent. Hope you found that useful. Thank you.